Across America, in small towns that most people drive through without stopping, there are motorcycle clubs that have quietly kept watch for decades, not through official channels, not through headlines or press conferences, through loyalty, through showing up, through a code that puts people before everything else. They aren't looking for recognition. They aren't waiting for permission. They move when something is wrong, and they stay until it's right. This is one of those stories. Millbrook Crossing sits in a valley in eastern Kentucky the way all the best towns do, like it grew there naturally, like it wasn't planned but arrived. A main street with a diner, a hardware store, a small grocery, a post office, a Baptist church on one end, a VFW hall on the other. The kind of town where people wave at cars they don't recognize because that's just what you do. On this particular Tuesday afternoon, in the golden slow hour before supper, a black cruiser rolled down Maple Road with a familiar rumble. Jake Miller, 44 years old, Crossroads Brotherhood patch on his back, wasn't in a hurry. He didn't have anywhere to be. He was just riding, the way a man rides when his mind needs air and his hands need something honest to do. He'd been a Brotherhood member for 11 years, grew up in Millbrook Crossing, left for the Army at 19, came back at 26 with a different set of eyes. The Brotherhood found him, or he found them, in the way that things find you when you're finally ready for them. They weren't a famous club. They weren't in newspapers. They didn't need to be. They were known in the valley the way good things are always known, quietly, through the people they'd helped, through the problems that had quietly stopped being problems. Jake coasted past a grocery store on the corner of Maple and 3rd, and that's when he saw her. She was standing at the curb, elderly woman, light blue cardigan, despite the warmth of the afternoon. A paper bag held close to her chest. Not heavy, but held like it mattered. The crosswalk signal had cycled twice while Jake watched. She hadn't moved. It wasn't fear. Jake had seen fear often enough to know what it looked like. This was something heavier than fear. This was a woman who had quietly run out of a particular kind of energy it takes to keep asking the world for help. He pulled over and cut the engine. "Hey there, ma'am." He kept his voice easy, friendly. The voice you use when you want someone to feel safe. "Want a hand crossing?" She looked up, surprised in the way people are surprised when a stranger is kind to them, like they'd stopped expecting it. Then she smiled. "If you don't mind," she said softly, "my balance isn't what it used to be." He parked and walked over, offered his arm, not rushed, not performative, just offered it the way his mother had taught him to offer things, like it cost nothing and meant everything. They crossed together, slow and steady. A few cars stopped on both sides, drivers watching quietly through their windshields, a big man in a motorcycle cut and a small woman in a blue cardigan, making their way across a crosswalk in the afternoon light. "My name's Margaret," she said when they reached the sidewalk. "Jake," he said. "Nice to meet you, Margaret." She hesitated. He noticed she didn't move to leave. "My husband," she started, then paused, choosing words carefully. "He's a veteran. He's been having a rough week." Jake nodded. He didn't rush her. "I've got time," he said. "I'll walk with you." The house was small and neat in the way that houses get when the people inside them have always taken pride in things. Paint touched up every few years. Garden beds tended even when bending over was painful, window frames clean. A home that had been loved for a very long time. Jake noticed the gutters. One section was pulling away from the roofline. The kind of thing that costs money to fix. The kind of thing that waits. Margaret opened the front door and stepped inside. Jake followed. The living room was quiet and warm. a worn couch, a bookshelf full of photographs, the smell of coffee that had been made hours ago, and by the window, in a recliner positioned to catch the afternoon light, a man, 71 years old, faded U.S. Army cap, the kind of face that had been strong for so long that even in stillness it held its shape, jaw set, eyes clear, the posture of a man who had never fully learned how to stop standing at attention. He shifted slightly as they entered. Jake caught the small involuntary wince. Just a flicker, before the man smoothed it away. An old reflex. Don't let them see it. A wound, the kind that never healed right. The kind a man just learns to live around because complaining about it was never on the table. This young man helped me, Margaret said gently. Jake. Thomas studied Jake for a moment. The cut, the patch, the man wearing it. Then he gave a slow, deliberate nod. Thomas, he said. His voice was steady and low. Not everyone does that anymore. Happy to, Jake said simply. He wasn't in a hurry to leave. He didn't know exactly why, just that something in the room asked him to stay a moment longer. His eyes move around the space the way a man's do when he's actually present somewhere, not nosily, just seeing. And then he saw them. On the kitchen table, visible from where he stood, a stack of envelopes, official return addresses, white, formal, the kind of envelopes with window fronts that show your name and nothing else, the kind that pile up when you stopped having answers, when opening them stopped changing anything. Jake looked at them for just a moment. Then he looked at Thomas. Thomas was already watching him. Neither man spoke. Neither man looked away. That silence between them said everything that needed to be said. Jake stayed for a while. Not long enough to overstay. Long enough to matter. He listened to Thomas talk. Not about the war, never about the war, but about building this house, about raising their daughter here, about the summer of 1987 when the creek flooded and half the valley came together to sandbag each other's properties, about what this town used to be, about what it still was. Underneath everything, when Jake finally stood to leave, he paused at the kitchen table. He slid a grocery gift card from his wallet and set it quietly on the surface, right next to the stack of unopened envelopes. Not on top of them, not calling attention to them, just beside them. Just something to help out, he said. Margaret moved to protest. Jake smiled and held up one hand. Easy, no big deal. Don't make it into something. Thomas watched from the recliner. His jaw was tight. Pride doing what pride always does, forming itself into a wall. But he didn't say no. That was the thing. He didn't say no. And Jake understood that for a man like Thomas, not saying no was the same as saying thank you in a language most people have forgotten how to speak. Back on Maple Road, Jake started the bike. The road was the same road it had always been. Same cracks, same curves, same mountains holding the valley on both sides. But something had shifted. He kept seeing the envelopes, that stack of white silence on a kitchen table, a man in a recliner, watching him notice them and not saying a word about it, a wound that never healed right, a woman who stood at a crosswalk until a stranger stopped. Jake had grown up in this town. He knew what pride looked like around here. He knew what it cost people. He also knew that the Brotherhood had a code, and the code was simple. When you see something wrong and you have the ability to do something about it, you don't look away. You stop. He throttled up and headed toward the clubhouse. There were 7 of them that evening. Regular Tuesday gathering. Coffee. Folding chairs. The low murmur of men who had known each other long enough that silence between them was comfortable. Jake sat down and told them what he'd seen. Not dramatically. Not like a speech. Just honestly. The way you tell your brother something when you don't know what to do with alone. Margaret at the Crosswalk. The house on Sycamore Street. Thomas in his recliner with his army cap and his old wound and his dignity sitting around him like armor, and the envelopes on the table, the kind that pile up when a man has run out of road. The room went quiet in the way it goes quiet when something true has been said. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Ray Booker leaned forward. Ray was 58, former Army himself. 2 tours, different era, same mountains in his eyes. He ran a small automotive repair shop on Route 9 and had been a Brotherhood member for 16 years. I know something about this, Ray said. He set his coffee down. 2 years ago, my cousin's father-in-law. Same situation. Veteran, older, facing foreclosure. Had no idea what he was entitled to. Man thought he was out of options. He paused. He wasn't. Not even close. What Ray explained that evening. Slowly, clearly, the way a man explains something he wishes someone had explained to him sooner, was something that too many veterans in too many towns like Millbrook Crossing have never been told. The VA has housing assistance programs specifically for veterans facing foreclosure. Not charity. Not handouts. Earned benefits. Programs that exist because this country made a promise to the people who served it. And those programs include help when a veteran is at risk of losing their home. The Veterans Benefits Administration offers loan modification assistance for veterans with VA-backed mortgages. But even for veterans without VA loans, there are programs, housing counselors, financial assistance pathways, emergency relief funds, that many veterans simply never know exist. Why don't they know? Because nobody told them. Because the paperwork is complicated, and the phone trees are long, and the people who need help the most are often the people with the least energy left to fight through systems. Because men like Thomas, men who spend their whole lives not asking, never learn how to start. Ray had a name, a VA housing specialist out of Lexington, a real person, not a phone menu. Someone who had helped his cousin's family navigate the exact situation Thomas and Margaret were facing. One phone call. Ray said quietly, that's all it took. One phone call, and a path opened up that nobody knew was there. Jake looked around the room. Every man there was nodding. They didn't make a production of it. 2 bikes. Jake and Ray. No fanfare. No convoy. No announcement. They parked on Sycamore Street in the early morning quiet and walked up the front path of the small, neat house. Jake knocked. A long pause. Then footsteps. Thomas opened the door. He was in his army cap and a flannel shirt. Dressed upright, the way a man who was raised a certain way always answers his door. He looked at Jake, then at Ray, then at the Brotherhood patches on both of them. His jaw set. Jake could see it happening. The pride forming its wall, the way it always had, the way it always would. Ray spoke first. He didn't say they'd heard about the envelopes. He didn't say they knew. He didn't make Thomas feel seen in a way that would feel like exposure. He just said, I'm Ray. I served too. Different years. Same thing. I heard you might be able to use a phone number. Silence. The morning birds in the yard. A car somewhere on the next street. Thomas looked at Ray for a long time. Then he stepped back from the door and opened it wider. Come in, he said. Margaret made coffee. The 4 of them sat at the kitchen table. The same table with the same envelopes. The same white stack of silence. Ray laid it out plainly. No drama. No pity. Just information. Delivered from one veteran to another, the kind of conversation that should have happened years ago, in some office, by someone whose job it was to explain these things. What Thomas was entitled to, what programs existed, what a single phone call to a real human being in Lexington could put into motion. Thomas listened without interrupting. That was the thing about men like him. They listened with their whole body, the way the Army had taught them to take in a briefing. When Ray finished, Thomas was quiet for a moment. Then he looked at the envelopes. He reached out and picked up the top one. held it for a moment, set it back down. "I didn't know," he said. His voice was steady. "I didn't know any of that was there." "Most don't," Ray said. "Nobody tells us. That's the problem." Thomas looked up at him. Then he nodded. Slow, deliberate, the nod of a man who has made a decision, who has chosen, after a long time carrying something alone, to put part of it down. He picked up the pen on the table. He wrote down the phone number Ray gave him. Margaret watched from across the table, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes full of something she didn't put into words. She didn't need to. Jake rode home alone. Maple Road in the morning was different from Maple Road in the afternoon. Cooler, quieter, the mountains holding the mist in their lower slopes. He thought about Thomas writing down that phone number. He thought about Margaret's hands. He thought about a crosswalk and a signal that cycled twice, and a woman in a light blue cardigan who had just needed someone to stop. He hadn't set out to do anything the day before. He hadn't ridden down Maple Road looking for a problem to solve. He was just riding, but he'd stopped, and stopping had opened a door that nobody inside the house had known how to open from the inside. That was the thing about this valley. That was the thing about Millbrook Crossing. That was the thing about the Brotherhood's code. You don't fix everything. You can't, but you stop. You notice. You bring what you have. And sometimes what you have is exactly what someone else was too proud to know they needed. If you or someone you love is a veteran facing housing hardship, foreclosure, or mortgage difficulty, please hear this. You have earned help that may be waiting for you. The U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs offers housing assistance programs specifically designed for veterans in financial hardship. These include loan modification support, VA housing counselors, emergency assistance programs, and in some cases, direct financial relief. You can reach the VA benefits hotline at 1-800-827-1000. Online, the VA's housing assistance resources are available at va.gov. Search Housing Assistance in the Benefits section. If you have a VA-backed mortgage, contact your loan servicer directly and identify yourself as a veteran. Federal law requires them to offer you specific hardship options. Many veterans, men and women like Thomas, never access these programs simply because no one told them they existed. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it. That's all it takes sometimes. One person stopping. One phone number passed across a kitchen table. The system isn't perfect, but the help is real, and you earned it. Before you go, I want to ask you something real. Have you or someone you love ever needed help and been too proud to ask for it? Thomas's story isn't unusual. Pride is one of the most powerful forces in a person's life. It's what keeps you standing when everything wants to knock you down. But sometimes it's also what keeps you from accepting what you've earned. Tell us your story in the comments. We read every one of them. And if you know a veteran who might be struggling right now, share this video. You might be the Jake in their story. You might be the reason someone finally writes down a phone number. From Millbrook Crossing, Kentucky, and from all of us here, thank you for watching.